So I'll just check if everyone is here. Anyone? Councillor Hammond's not here as of yet. Anyone else missing as you look around? No, we're all here. I'd like to welcome Laura, who is our new Manager of Governance, who sent out an email today, and she'll organise time to catch up with you all. So welcome to the Mid-Murray team. Jared, also welcome to the briefing session today. So we'll get started and we'll hand over to Jared, who's going to talk about the management plan.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that. So I just want to give you a quick background to the animal management plan. So council's required to have this plan in accordance with the Dog and Cat Management Act. We obviously have one. There's a review of that plan that must happen every 5 years. So the current 2020-2025 animal management plan is due for renewal now, update now. So just over the next couple of slides, I'll just give a brief of what we will be doing. This will be done in-house. So from 1st of April, so from today to May 25, stage 1 will be actually reviewing of the animal management plan, updating the relevant data and information, prepare an updated draft management plan after that review, and present the draft management plan to council for endorsement for public consultation. Should have said we don't actually see any significant changes that will happen with this review. It's just more the data itself that will be updated. So June, we'll present the draft animal management plan for public consultation. We'll seek written submissions, review and consider the feedback, and then amend the draft animal management plan as needed. July to August, stage 3, present the draft animal management plan to council for approval to submit to the Dog and Cat Management Board for their consideration. Review the feedback from the Dog and Cat Management Board. Present final draft animal management plan to council for adoption, and submit the final draft of the animal management plan to the Dog and Cat Management Board. So once the Animal Management Board have endorsed it, that plan, the new plan effectively takes 6 months from when it has been presented and adopted by the Dog and Cat Management Board. So it's going to be a quick turnaround. Yeah, so as I said, we don't see any major changes with it. It would just be the data that's in it, and the type of data that we'll be updating is around dog registration, so the number of dogs registered, number of complaints, dogs impounded, and that's also with cats. The cats is more around just complaints with dogs. We also have some KPIs that are associated with the plan, so we'll review those and update those as necessary. So that's it, really. Any questions?
Councillor Tochick McPeak first.
Yeah, just a quick one. Just wondering, Jared, whether you had any idea if there's any appetite for cat curfews. Anyway?
They are reviewing the Mark's updating the cat. He's actually going to a meeting tomorrow around cats. So we'll see what comes of that. But I do believe there's something in and around there, and what's in the animal management plan as well. So I need to review whether that's in there.
Gary, do you have anything on that prior to going to Councillor Schultz?
No.
Is that no, Gary?
Oh, sorry, Gary. I thought you said Jared.
Yeah, look, I think cat management is going to be a very topical issue. As Jared referred to, Mark is attending a session around cat management from a statewide perspective. So I think once we know a little bit more direction from state government, whether we need to sort of increase the level of action within the plan.
Thank you, Gary. Councillor Schultz?
I'm just wondering what are the KPIs? I probably missed something, but I just wonder what they
No,
are.
so there's several. So there's promote the community benefits of pet ownership, create a sustainable pet-friendly environment, provide a strong regulatory framework, encourage good animal behaviours, and encourage lifetime identification. So there's objectives, action, and measures that are associated with each one of those. So we'll review those.
Thanks. So that's actually measured by your department. It's not an outside body that does that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And we report back to the cat management board on those KPIs.
Thank you. Any other questions to Jared or Gary? No. We'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is a growth strategy update. So plenty of work been happening in this space by Gary and the team and our consultants. So I'll hand over to you, Gary.
I just gave myself organised with technology. So yes, thank you, Ben. So I thought I'd just take an opportunity to give elected members an update as to where we are with the growth management and housing strategy since it was commenced. So very quickly, what we're trying to achieve out of this. So this is just a very quick overview of how the growth management housing strategy sort of fits into the bigger picture of local government and how council operates. So effectively, what we're trying to get out of the strategy is where our allotment yields can generate housing capacity within our existing zones, and whether there is an opportunity to identify new areas for rezoning. That part of the project is where we're really getting the nuts and bolts done. We're also working alongside Place Forecast, who's a company that does population dwelling projections. So they're doing a bit of work for us in that space as well, to have a better understanding of where some of that dwelling capacity can be. Jared and I just actually had a online meeting with them just earlier this afternoon, looking at how some of the data within our growth strategy can be utilised in some of the assumption planning that they do. A key part of the project is the spatial planning tool. This part of the project is slightly delayed, and I've mentioned it to members of the strategic committee, due to the sub-consultant who initially commenced the project had to pull out due to family reasons. But the tool itself, hopefully it will still be progressed. And this is a key component to start pulling in some of that data into a spatial tool to give direction to council as to where some of the infrastructure investment and opportunities may lie. And that analysis will hopefully inform both our infrastructure asset management planning processes, as well as working through infrastructure agreements with potential developers when they need to upgrade or utilise council assets. An example being, for instance, the infrastructure agreements with the renewable companies when they're using our road assets. So this spatial tool will be able to help negotiate some of that element with those projects. Ultimately, they all help inform council's long-term financial plan. So that's a very quick overview of the project and what it's trying to deliver. In terms of where we're at, so as I said, we're now at the stage where we have undertaken some initial internal consultation and external consultation with the community on an issues and options paper. So now URPS have presented the draft strategy, and that was circulated to all members of council and our Strategic and Economic Activation Committee, seeking feedback. We had a very robust conversation at the committee last week with a number of recommended commentary changes that could be made to the growth strategy. And it's hoped that we will then have a revised draft with following that feedback by this Friday afternoon at the latest, so that it can be presented to council at the 15th of April meeting to endorse for public consultation. So just very quickly, there's a lot of words on this screen, so apologies, but I just tried to capture some of the feedback that was received during the committee meeting. So there's some general comments about some of the format of the strategy, providing a bit more geographical landscape context to some of our communities, considering what are the elements of growth, tempering back some of the feedback that was made from the early engagement, in terms of, some people's expectations around where growth could occur, but in reality may not be able to be achieved due to various constraints. So just tempering the language a little bit. And a key thing is that we have reduced the number of focus towns from 4 to 3. And the one that's been excluded has been Morgan. So originally the report had Morgan, Mannon, Truro and Swan Reach. So we've recommended that Morgan be removed. And the other key change is changing priorities just to lead directions, just to signify that, they may not be priorities, from a financial capacity for council to deliver. So it's just to acknowledge that these are some of the things that council would like to achieve with the strategy. Some other items for consideration in terms of renewable energy projects, public transport and walking networks. Within the actual 9 planning areas, some had more conversation than others. So Morgan Cadell's very much about looking at some of the zone boundaries, reviewing some of the town zones to potentially look at a main street, and reviewing the rural intensive enterprise zone that's to the west of Morgan. So just changing some of the language in those. In terms of Blanchetown, there was commentary about its disconnection with the river from a tourism perspective, its location on the highway, acting as a service centre, looking at mooring opportunities, again, looking at rezoning some of the town in terms of what's the appropriate zoning, again, to look at main street opportunities and looking at these service centres that exist on the highway. In terms of Truro, the main feedback there was about the actual ability to implement the township master plan and the fact that it may be contingent on the freight route. So again, just noting that opportunity. In terms of Mannum, and obviously Mannum is the main sort of area for growth, there was commentary around reducing the number of zones that are actually within the township. So if you look at the planning design code, there are a multitude of residential type zones, from sort of established neighbourhood, suburban neighbourhood to high density neighbourhood. So there may be an opportunity to reduce and refine those zones. There are a number of zone anomalies that could be looked at from an employment land perspective. Also looking at the actual land supply for employment land. There's not a huge take up of the current zoned land. However, we may need to still look at future employment land beyond what is currently zoned if growth was to be achieved. Opportunity to upgrade some of our roads to accommodate, again, that growth. At the moment, Mail Road is acknowledged. It was suggested that Ram Road should also be included. That the Township Main Street zone be reviewed and look at Adelaide Road zoning as part of an urban design framework was suggested to be included in the document. The beautification of Adelaide Road as a new main street, the relocation of the SA Water facility to unlock some of that residential and improve connections between Mannum Township and Mannum Waters. Again, looking at some of the rural zone to capture the solar farms and BESSs that are currently along Adelaide Mannum Road. And again, some tidy up and include rezoning the Baysby Reserve Shack area as part of the town. And finally, the comment just about the freight route, providing potentially an opportunity for Sedan and Cambrai, rather than necessarily seeing it as a hindrance. So as I said, the idea is to bring a report to the 15th April council meeting to endorse it for a period of 4-week consultation. The dates being proposed is the 28th of April to the 26th of May. There's some sort of key messages that were initially identified as part of the initial engagement strategy that was presented to council back before the issues and options paper was prepared. But I think the important thing to note is that the fact that the State Planning Commission has now released the Murray-Mallee Regional Plan draft for consultation. They're doing a 12-week engagement from the 25th of March to the 17th of June. So I think the key thing for us, and I said to the committee, is our messaging is going to be very clear around the fact that we are doing our engagement concurrently with the regional plan. So we will make sure that people have a clear understanding of what the role of our growth strategy is alongside the regional plan. And it is worth noting that the regional plan in its draft does acknowledge that we are doing this growth strategy. So that's one of the actions that is identified in the regional plan. The other important message here is that the regional plan will be a sort of a living document. So previously, regional plans were sort of produced and reviewed once every 5 years. These regional plans are more interactive. They're an online document. As we progress our growth strategy, and if the regional plan is adopted at the end of this year, and through our growth strategy, we identify areas for growth, we do have the opportunity to refine the regional plan and propose amendments to the regional plan after it's adopted, and or through identifying areas for rezoning, we have the opportunity to identify future code amendments to rezone parcels of land, and there is a new fast track system if it's actually acknowledged within the regional plan. So we can use some of that opportunity down the line. So that's it. Any questions?
Just want to stop sharing your screen, Gary, and we'll be able to see everyone on the Brady Bunch. So a lot of work's been done. We've obviously channeled that through Gary, the strategic committee, and we provided all the elected members an opportunity to provide feedback through to those committee representatives. And I think Mandy, you're on that committee. Anyone else? Who else is on that one? Jen. And you've consolidated that. That draft's getting consolidated at the moment by the consultant, and that'll be coming in a report to council. Then to go out to public consultation.
Yeah. And it is a draft for consultation. So we are seeking community feedback as to whether they support the areas identified for growth. There will be an opportunity to refine the strategy post consultation. So we're not locking anything in at this stage.
Thank you. Any questions of Gary? No, we'll have that report to the April council meeting as well. Next item on the agenda is discussion on the elected member reports and contents. This just came up, I think, last month about what is to be included on that and any questions that might relate to the report that is provided. So we want to make sure we're providing information to the community on what you all get up to. So I welcome Vanessa, and I'd like to acknowledge Vanessa, who has been acting in the governance role over the last 10 months. So she's transitioning her role. She won't be lost. She's still doing some work across tidying up some projects as she's working, and will be doing some project work for us as well. So I'll hand over to Vanessa and to Mayor Bailey to have a conversation around the elected member reports.
Where's Vanessa?
Where is Vanessa? You're there, but we can't hear you, Vanessa, if you're talking.
I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me now, Ben?
Yes.
We can.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that false start. I was saying that I emailed out yesterday just a little bit of a discussion sheet to raise some conversations about what's appropriate to include in an elected member activity report. Members will be aware that earlier this year we adopted the Code of Practice Procedures at meetings, and that provided some guidelines around when your report needs to be received by administration and what will happen with your report once it has been received. But we didn't actually broach what you should include. So the suggestions for things for you to include should be restricted to items of particular interest or concern to the council. So that should be things from a strategic focus, a request for a resident for you to attend a meeting to have a conversation with them, because that's important, because that's a matter that may go before council, or it may be a matter that's raised later with the administration. And your report should also focus on events or activities that you've been invited to or you intend in your formal capacity. For example, you might be invited to the Manum Show in your capacity as a council member, but you wouldn't include that you went to the Purnong Hall to watch a movie night necessarily, unless you received a formal invitation to attend. So you really have to think about, what am I doing in my official capacity as a councillor that's going to go back to council and be a council decision, or likely to be a future council decision? So they're the types of things that you'd include in your activity report. So do we just want to have a quick conversation around that? Is anyone? I can only see the screen being shown. I can't see any hands up, so I'll leave it to Mayor Bailey to ask, facilitate the questions.
Having trouble unmuting.
Just press the space bar, Councillor Barber. We can't hear you.
Or pop it in the chat.
Any other questions while we're waiting for Councillor Barber? There you go, Jeff.
No.
No, even though you're off mute, we can't hear you.
I'm sure we could hear him before.
Yeah.
Mandy, have you got another question while we will look at?
Oh, I was just wondering whether some examples of what not to include might be helpful.
Sure.
I don't know.
So
Yeah.
some examples of not to include might be that you attended a meeting of a progress association, or you went to the opening of an event that you weren't officially invited to. So say it was, let me think of an event that you might be invited to. So let's go back to the Manum Show. You might be invited to that in your capacity as an elected member, or you might attend that event because you're a community member, although you are available to talk to people. So it's more things to include in your reports are more strategic. So
council related, really.
Yeah, and so the example about the Progress Association, if you're the representative on that as appointed by the council, then you would put that on your report. But if you've just gone as a community member or because you're interested, then that's not in your official capacity as an elected member.
Thanks, Ben.
I know in the past there's been like someone's put down that they've gone to a men's shed meeting, for example, but that's not council related. So
Not
Unless
unless-
they're appointed
just as an example.
Unless they're appointed, Councillor Davis, as
Yeah.
a representative on that. If they're not, then it doesn't
No.
get included. No.
or unless the men's shed have issued them a specific invitation to attend for a particular function or particular meeting. So if you receive an official request through your council email to attend something, then you'd include that.
Makes sense.
Is there any other questions? What Jeff, I think, he might be typing something.
Yeah.
So, yes, Councillor Myers.
Can you hear me?
We
Yep.
can.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember this topic coming up quite a few years ago when councillors used to put down that they met with, for instance, I met with Councillor Davis and just left it at that. But then that raised a big can of worms. What are those two meeting for and what are they actually discussing? So it was advised not to put that sort of thing down in your report.
But I
It's
guess
good
if
for
you're
your,
meeting a community member, that's different. Like if you had a meeting with a ratepayer, for example, that would be different,
Yeah.
assuming.
I think Councillor Barber's question is in the chat. I'm sorry, I can't see
Yeah,
it.
so he says, my question was if I'm invited to a Nil Dotty Progress dinner, should that be in my report? Are you on the Nil Dotty Progress Association as a council rep? Yeah.
So
And it should be included anyway because they've extended an official invitation to him. So if you're extended an invitation in your capacity as a councillor, you include that in your report.
Vanessa, do you want to make a comment on Councillor Myers' comment about meeting with the members?
I think if you had a meeting, say you met with an elected member and you met with another resident to discuss an issue. So say an award, so the elected members in the Shearer Award met together to meet with a resident, you'd include that and put more fulsome discussion. So you have to be very careful to what you open yourself up to in your report by putting comments like Councillor Myers just said, just meeting with Councillor Davis, because there's no context around that conversation and you want to protect yourself and not be seen to opening to, say, colluding or discussing matters for council decision prior to the meeting. But you may have a general serious matter to discuss as ward councillors, something unique to the ward. So it's all around providing context to your comment without writing a novel.
Thank you. Vanessa, do you want to continue with your...
The other thing that you should be including in your activity report, and they should be subjects of separate reports as well, are attendance at meetings of subsidiaries and external committees to which you've been appointed. So I'm just going to choose Councillor Hammond, just because I know this one for sure off the top of my head, that she's been appointed by council to the Murray-Darling Association regional committee. So when the meetings of those committee take place, those minutes for that meeting should be tabled and presented to council with a summary report from Councillor Hammond. And it's the same with everyone who's been appointed to an external committee by council. Those should be coming back. Probably the one that we need to work on a little bit is you are required to write a report to council if you attend training, conference, seminar, or similar activities. Now, in the council member allowances and benefits policy, it states that if you do not, that reimbursement for expenses associated with those events will only be made on presentation of a report in a council agenda. So say I travel to Adelaide to attend infrastructure training at LGA House. In my capacity as a council member, I'm required to come back and write a brief report to be presented to council. And after that time, then I can claim my expenses that I incurred during that training. So that may be car parking, it may be travel for kilometres travelled for the car, that type of thing, or lunch if lunch wasn't provided as part of the training.
And if you don't want to claim?
You should still be providing the report, because that's still a requirement of the policy that you provide those reports. It doesn't, once again, it doesn't have to be a long report. It can just be a summary of the key learnings that you took away from the event.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, the infrastructure training that Simone and I went on to, I presume we would just get together and write a joint report. It was an online thing. You know, there's no expenses associated with it for us. So it was just a report, just for information. So I guess you and I would do that jointly, Simone.
Yep.
And I
Right,
would
then
say
my report.
doesn't necessarily have to be a report as such, because one of the intents of this part is around providing information for the benefit of all the other elected members. So you could potentially do a presentation, Councillor Tochick-McPeak, with Simone at a briefing, so that the knowledge that you have gained from doing that is able to be passed on to the elected members. That's the intent of this, is that, you know, you've learned something and you're able to share that with the elected members.
Yeah, but I'd still put it in the report, just that because
Correct.
it was, yeah.
Yes, that's right, because it's of interest and it gives the opportunity for other council members to ask you questions around what you learned or what you particularly valued, or whether it'll be worthwhile them undertaking that training in the future. Now, the next little point we'll move on to is just for consideration is, as I said, Ben had me have a quick look at the council members' allowance and benefits policy. And as you'd be aware, you're all paid an allowance in accordance with Section 76 of the Act that's set by the Remuneration Tribunal of South Australia, and it's indexed
Extensive
annually.
as it is.
And what we're wondering is what discretionary payments do you feel that should be considered as part of the policy? So I've written, I've just done a quick desktop review of 4 councils and written down some things that they have that we can have a think about, a conversation around. One council considers, this is a regional council, they considered it poses an undue risk for council members to travel to or from official business in the late evening, early morning, and they will reimburse costs for accommodation, meals on the night before if the meeting finishes later than 9 p.m. or starts earlier than 7 p.m. and the council lives more than 50 kilometres from the meeting location. So that's something to have a think about. Telephone internet allowance, my understanding is at the moment you are paid $30 a month for your telephone allowance.
25.
25? See, I was giving you a pay rise. So I'm not the finance person. And then, do you want to be entitled to have IT help and support for your own devices? So if you're using your own phone for council business, or your own laptop or your own iPad, and something goes wrong, do you want to be able to access council's IT staff to have them have a look at it?
I don't
And
think we should be using our own laptop.
Mm.
do you use your own telephones?
Yeah. Yes, because we get an allowance for that.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. And then just the need for tax invoices. So if you are claiming for something, you do actually need to attach a tax invoice to your claim form, and we're going to need to have a think around the time frame for lodging reimbursement requests, because sometimes what happens is people will submit requests 6 months after the event, which impacts budgets and can carry over budgets. So requests for reimbursements need to be presented in a timely manner. And then I've just made a little list of some things that may not be reimbursed. So that's the reimbursement of costs associated with attendance of meetings not formally requested by the community groups or organisation when fulfilling the role of the local representative. So if I decided that I was going to go down to Morgan for Anzac Day and I was a councillor based in Mannum, I can't claim that. That although I'm going to wear my elected member badge, that's not appropriate for me to be claiming for, because it's not something that I've been specifically invited to. And things like that. So general meetings with the community, attending community events, attending community meetings, they're the types of activities that are considered to be covered within your allowance that you receive from the Remuneration Tribunal. So you are an elected representative of the community, and that's how you're paid, although it may not be a huge amount. That's like your wage for carrying out those day-to-day activities. You're also not allowed to claim expenses occurred during a leave of absence. So if you're taking a leave of absence for a month and you decide, oh, this library in Wagga Wagga's got a great program, I might go and check it out and bring the idea back, but you're on a leave of absence, you can't claim any costs associated with that. You also should not be claiming costs associated with attendance at political fundraising events, and they're going to be coming around thick and fast now that the election's been called. And because
Really?
you are
No.
and because you are like you are the closest level of political representative to the community, I'm sure you'll be receiving lots of invitations to support different events or turn up at different events to attract community. So costs associated with that you can't claim. You also, this is a tricky one, and this is something the previous Ombudsman was hot on, is if you're buying something associated with your role as an elected member that you want reimbursement for, you should not be handing over your frequent flyer card or your flybys card to get points. So those purchases have to be exclusive of points, and then council should consider not reimbursing the purchase of alcohol. That's another thing that the previous Ombudsman was very hot on. And council, while the policy does say that we will pay, parking will be reimbursed, payment of speeding and parking fines will not be reimbursed. So they're just some little things to think about. But if you can think of other ideas that you think, well, can this be reimbursed, or what about this idea? You can just email them through to me and I can collate them and present them back to Ben for consideration and maybe a policy review.
Yeah, the only thing of what you've said that when you asked about the phones, I would like something to be in there, like we can get IT support to put the email, like anything to do with council on our phone, we should be able to get support with, but apart from that, no.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Bailey.
Thank you, Vanessa. Any questions of Vanessa or Mayor Bailey on that?
Just a question about whether it might be helpful for us to have a bit of a cheat sheet on all of that. Rather than having to go to some policy, that would be helpful, I think.
Certainly, Councillor. Once I receive all the feedback, I'm happy to collate it and send it out as a little cheat sheet for you, a little reminder sheet.
Thank you, Vanessa. We'll move on to the last item on the agenda, which is the Morgan Caravan Park inspection with elected members. You'll remember, I think a couple of months ago, we did a briefing on the status of the lease discussions and negotiations. And one of those options was consideration of the elected members visiting the park and understanding and seeing what has been proposed and what the discussions look like. So I just wanted to touch base with you on that to check whether there's still interest in that. We have talked about a bus trip or a tour with elected members, which I think we discussed last year. whether we just do this and those people that are interested can make their way, and I'll organise a time for that to happen over the next month, or we want to take the opportunity to potentially see something else and make more use of the time potentially around that. So I just open that up to the floor for feedback.
Come on up. I think it's a
on
great idea.
Mandy, I think you were about to say something.
Is there anything else that you had in mind that you think might be useful for us to go and see?
Yeah, Dave, do you want to maybe question without notice? Because you were giving some thought to some things that have been proposed previously.
Yeah, I mean, what we had proposed was basically looking at the Canberra landfills, a couple of the transfer stations, generally some other road projects or projects in the area, and visiting some towns where there's some significant things happening. So that was the first proposal, and just getting out and about and having a look at some of the items out in the field.
And
I'd be interested in that.
we can facilitate that. It's just obviously the logistics and the timing to enable people. Obviously, the key for me is that those people that are interested to look at the Morgan Caravan Park, but if there is interest in, say, looking at the Canberra landfill, then or some transfer stations, and we can facilitate that under the parameters that were agreed to by the elected members, whether that's personal travel or we can use the what we call the fun bus or the council vehicles to facilitate that to reduce cost as part of that process.
Yeah, the transfer station tour that I did last term was really interesting for me as an elected member to sort of get how waste worked and, you know, what we do in each transfer station or the landfill.
Yeah, and I went on that waste that day visit to the waste collection and transfer station, and we had talks on how the recycling process happens and everything, and that was outside our region, and that was very useful. I thought very interesting. So, yep, I'd be interested in anything like that.
And also, if people haven't been to a shack area, I think in that tour that we did a couple of shack areas just for Dave to explain how the roads works and how the swim systems works and things like that. It was interesting.
And Ben, also just, I mean, part of the last tour, or the tour that was proposed, was also going to have a look at some of the recovery of the shack areas and so forth from the flood 2 years on. So that was also part of the program that we put up.
Yeah. To Jeff, we note your point. We'll definitely make it worthwhile and not so it looks like a junket. It'll be a tour to see some sites. So I think what I'm hearing is potentially a transfer station, the landfill, the shack, one of the shack areas in the north, and also the Morgan Caravan Park. For those, we'll try to find a convenient time. It's not mandatory. It's if you're available and it suits. And as we said, we can facilitate the use of council vehicles or your own vehicles if that's what you want to do to reduce the expenses and the cost. Everyone happy with that approach? Just out of interest, how many people would be interested in attending that? And I know it's subject to the date and the time. Yep. All right. No worries. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on that? No. Look at that. We're exceeding expectations. We're 5 minutes ahead of our planned time frame, which is unheard of with us. Are there any other questions that you might want to raise of strategic importance that we could conclude in potentially another briefing, or maybe a quick question? Councillor Schultz.
Maybe just a report of what's happening with signage in reserves and that. I mean, I know there has to be a bulk order or something, but maybe just a bit of an update on that to find out if it's going anywhere or not.
Is that on the camping or just so?
It's basically like when you get a complaint about a reserve and request signage, like say no camping or no fires or whatever, you know, as in Christian Reserve at Black Hill. I mean, that's been requested, but Apparently the signs have got to be ordered in bulk or something, and I'm just wondering whether anything's happened with that to progress it so that signage can go up where there's a problem.
Sure. We'll get Jared to give that some thought. Thank you.
Just from me, just in regards to the oh, what do you call it, election being called, and different bits of funding that we've got. I know we've signed off on one of the big ones. Is there any that that can't be signed on because of they're in caretaker mode?
Yeah, so my understanding, Gary might confirm this, the precincts partnership funding, which was 1.2 maybe, Gary will confirm. We didn't execute that agreement or were unable to agree. Is that correct, Gary?
Partly correct. We have received an email from the departments identifying who the state agency is going to be to process the funding. They indicated in that was last Friday, David, wasn't it? That we got that.
Correct. And we got another notification today as well. Yeah, I haven't opened yet. So yeah.
So they
so
may be
no
trying to
indication
facilitate that.
Yeah, just confirming our response.
Yeah.
So they may be trying to facilitate that, Gary, to an extent. Sorry, Gary, I was talking over you then. What?
Yeah, that's right. Like I said, at this stage, there's no indication that funding is going to be held up due to caretaker. So we might be okay.
Okay, thank you.
And all the others, the Play Our Way,
That's been signed off on. So again, that's just now in train.
Sure.
Thank
you. Any other questions? Councillor Myers.
I'd just like to ask the other councillors, have they been contacted by a lady? I actually wasn't interested enough to get her name, but she was concerned about the north-south freight route going through Sedan, Cambrai. She sounded very much like a ratepayer who was concerned about it, but as the conversation went on, it turned out she was working for somebody who's trying to get elected. I think it's Rex Fitzpatrick or something along those lines. And she was, as soon as she came out that she was working for him, I sort of just went quiet and didn't want to really talk to her. So I don't know if anybody else has been contacted.
Yeah,
No,
I've had a call.
No, I haven't. I've got one from Tony Passon to put a flyer, a call flute in my front yard.
All right. So Simone, you had, did you say?
Yes, yeah, I got a call for Anne, her name was, I think.
All right. Any other questions or comments? No? All right. Thank you. Look at that. 4:49. Very efficient for a Tuesday afternoon. Enjoy the week. Sorry, Jeff, that your technology wasn't working. You had to type the questions. Anyway, reach out as required. So thank you very much. See you later.